All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for roll call, please.
Sand City. Here. County of Monterey. Seaside.
Here.
Veranda. Delray Oaks.
Here.
Salinas.
Here.
Pacific Grove. Castroville.
Here.
Monterey.
Here.
Marina Coast.
Here. And do we have the recording on?
It is. It's on.
Okay. I just didn't see it on the, thank you.
So just a quick note to board members, when you're speaking, make sure that you pull the mic in front of you and you're speaking directly into the mic. Staff has been sharing that there's been some issues with audio, even when you turn away from the mic, if you're not speaking directly into it, they're not picking it up on Zoom. And I'll remind you if I notice it as best as possible, but just wanted to give that as a precursor to make sure that our folks in Zoom world can hear us. With that, we'll go ahead and kick it off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask Mr. Moore to kick us off here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. And with that, we'll go to 4 additions to agenda.
No additions.
All right, there's been no additions. With that, we'll move on to 5, approval of agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this? All right, with that, we'll bring it back to the board for motion or for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That moved to 6, public comments. This is an opportunity for folks to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. So we'll open it up for folks in the public. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. All right, I'm not seeing any takers. So with that, we will close public comment and we'll move on to item 7 is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve consent?
Move approval.
Second. So moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on consent items or wish to pull something from consent? All right, with that, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That moved to 8A. Budget Personnel Committee was canceled. So with that, we'll move to 8B, which is Recycled Water Committee, held on April 16th. Is there a motion to approve the draft meeting minutes?
Move to receive the RWC draft minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. With that, take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, bring it back for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And with that, we'll move on to 9, public hearing. We have 9A is a public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 3502 TAC 3 to receive a report on Monterey One Water's vacancies in recruitment and retention efforts. And with that, I think I'm passing it to Lyra. Awesome. Hi, Lyra. It's good to see you.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
All right, so good evening, Board of Directors. I'm Lyra Sampson. I'm the Director of Employee Services for Monterey One Water, and I will be giving you a brief update on AB 2561. So, presentation. What's up? There we go. Waiting for the- Okay. So AB 2561, it went into effect January 1st of 2025, and the purpose of this bill was to address some of the high vacancy rates in local public agencies, as well as some of the service impact deliveries that they've had and employee burnout. So there's 3 key provisions. The first one being obviously to track the vacancies for the different bargaining groups that we work with. The second one is to hold at least one public hearing every year right before the board approves the annual budget. And if any of your vacancies for your bargaining groups exceeds 20%, we'll have to do a bit more of an extensive presentation to include things like the timelines, average time to hire, looking at potential improvements that we plan to make to ensure that we can kind of fill those positions. Next slide. And so the agency has 133 budgeted positions. However, for the purposes of this presentation, our bargaining groups only have 99 for each of the four bargaining groups. The other positions are like our board members, our exec team, any at-will position, interns, things like that. So this is a list of our four bargaining groups that we work with. The General Employees Association, Operations Employees Bargaining Group, Mid-Management Employees Group, and our Management Employees Group. And we do not have any that are over 20%, which is kind of a good thing because it does require more work. Next slide. So you'll see here the biggest group we have is our GEA, that's 57. We have 2 vacancies, and that puts us at about 3.5%. And then our mid-management employees group, we have 1 vacancy, which puts us at 6.25%. And these are the 3 vacant positions. One of them will be filled starting Monday. We actually have a new hire coming on board for our electrician instrumentation position. And we have posted for our government affairs advocate as well as our environmental compliance analyst position. All right, and so there's no fiscal impact to this. All the positions are budgeted and the recruitments are budgeted. So I ask that the board receive the report on the Monterey One Water's vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts pursuant to Government Code Section 3502.3. Any questions?
Beautiful. Thank you, Lyra. Please.
So for a question for legal counsel, does this require a motion to receive the report under the law?
It doesn't require one, but we recommend that you take a vote to receive the report. Many agencies handle it that way.
Okay, thank you for that. And then second, which I'm not sure whether that goes to Lyra or to legal counsel, how do we handle someone who's on long-term leave, sick leave, admin leave, regular leave? Essentially, the position's not filled for some significant period of time. Does the law just gloss over that and we pretend it's filled?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
We have to kind of do some workarounds as far as staff goes, but that's considered a filled position.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, with that, I'll take it out to the public. For those in the public that wish to speak on this item, you can use the raise hand function if you're on Zoom. All right. Seeing none.
Move to receive the report.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And with that, we move on to 10A. It's our first action item is to consider receiving the preliminary budget for Purwater Monterey Fund, Fund 58 for fiscal year 26-27. And with that, I will pass it to Paul maybe to kick us off or just go
Actually,
to
to
Steve.
Steve.
Okay, yeah, Steve.
Good evening, Chair Williamson and members of the board. I'm Steve Kerrigan, Senior Director of Administrative Services, and we're here tonight to present the preliminary budget for Pure Water Monterey for the fiscal year 26-27. By way of background, there are 3 budgets that we put together and present to you each year for your consideration. The first budget is the Monterey County Resources Agency, or WRA budget, and it was presented to you earlier this year in January. Tonight, you will receive the second budget, the Pure Water Monterey budget, and it's also referred to as the Department 58 budget. And next month, on May 21st, at the annual budget workshop, you will receive the third budget, our budget, which is also referred to as the wastewater budget. Chai, you know that first. One more. There you go. Perfect, thank you. I'd just like to take a moment and very briefly describe Pure Water Monterey, and this information is taken directly off of our website. So Monterey One Water collects, treats, and purifies the wastewater before conveying and injecting the water into the seaside groundwater basin. Monterey One Water then sells this purified water to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, who has jurisdiction over the seaside groundwater basin. Monterey Peninsula then sells its purified water to CalAm, who extracts the water from the basin and delivers it to its customers in the Monterey Bay Service District. Before I pass it on to Johanna Vargas for the budget presentation, I do want to thank both of our partners in the Pure Water Monterey project. From Monterey Peninsula, Dave Stolt, Mike McCullough, and Nishil Bali, and from Marina Coast Water District, Rem Scherenzer and Mary Lagaska. And of course, from our team, Johanna Vargas, Dylan Hopkins, Tammy McNary, Matt Thompson, of course, and of course, Paul Shudo. Johanna.
Next slide, please. The preliminary fiscal year 26-27 budget for Fund 58 supports the Pure Water Monterey program. It's broken into 4 main categories: personnel expenses, operations and management, debt service, and the capital improvement projects. The operating budget overview for fiscal year 2027, we're not adding any new staff. However, we're accounting for standard cost increases. That is a 3% increase in salaries tied to the CPI per the MOU agreements that we have, and the benefits are also trending higher. We are estimating about 9% increase on benefits. The biggest portion of our operating costs continue to be the operations and management expenses, with expenses like utilities, chemicals, repairs, essential services to keep the system running reliably. These increases reflect inflation. At a high level, personnel costs are about 2.5 million, while operations and maintenance were budgeting at 11.7 million. Next slide, please. The debt service, we are continuing to pay down the existing loans that are tied to the original Pure Water Monterey project, that is the SRF loan, at a 1% interest. We estimate we have actually 2 annual payments in the amount of 4.2 million. We also, next fiscal year, we do see the start of the payments on the WIFIA loan that was utilized for the expansion project, with the first payment in the amount of 475,000. Next slide, please. For next fiscal year, there are 2 major projects that are being funded: the switchgear replacement project, which is a continuation from last year, and a new storage building. The total amount for the capital projects, it's about 3.7 million. Next slide, please. The projected revenues. The revenues for the Pure Water Monterey project comes from the recycled water sales. The revenue is based on our partners, Marina Coast Water District and the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, purchasing a combined total of 5686 acre-feet. Each partner provided us with their projected volume, and that's how we calculated the revenue. The total proposed budget for Fund 58 Pure Water Monterey, it's about 22.1 million, which is aligned with the revenue projections. Next slide, please. With that, staff recommends that the board receive the preliminary budget for fiscal year 26-27 Fund 58 for Pure Water Monterey. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Please.
So we have some employees, correct, who work exclusively on Pure Water Monterey.
Correct.
But I assume, well, I know we have some employees who don't devote all of their time to that. Our general manager, for instance. So how do we track in the computation of salaries and wage expense? How do we track those part-timers' time?
Want me to do this or you want
I
to?
can do it. We have the budget, it's estimated at about 8.5 full-time employees. We do have full-time totally dedicated to Department 58. The other 4 are from different departments. So what we do is we appropriate a percentage of their salary to Department 58. We also have in their timesheets, we have payroll codes, as we call it, that are assigned specifically for Department 58. So anytime they work on Department 58 related, they use that timesheet code.
Okay, so there's a timesheet that tracks at least some of their time on that.
Correct.
Yeah, and I would say over a given year, there's probably like 25 people at least, maybe 30 that work on something to do with Pure Water Monterey, and they just put that on their time card to reflect.
So does our general manager submit a time card?
Your general manager does submit a time card.
Okay.
Generally speaking, most of my time is general hours across the whole agency versus being segmented into pure water, water resources, or wastewater.
Right.
But when it comes down to, let's say Jose's people, some of them are full-time to pure water, others are, stepping in and doing certain things. So they'll allocate, I worked 2 hours today on pure water or the injection wells or something like that.
And then there are some activities that benefit all of our cost centers. So there should be some form of whatever you want to call it, but I'll just call it overhead cost, some percentage of your, for instance, your overall salary that gets put into 58 over and above what you've tracked on your time card. How do we come up, and this partly so the public from the board knows what the process is, how do we figure out those quote unquote overhead percentages?
So that's the indirect costs that we were talking about with Wildan when they were working on it, the cost allocation plan, which we put a pause on because of the time frame of everything. So moving to the future, we're going to hopefully have a comprehensive cost allocation plan where the indirect costs will be hopefully similar to everyone we work with. When I say everyone we work with, whether it be Water Management District, Water Resources Agency, City of Salinas, Marina Coast, some of our member entities where we do work on pump stations and such. However, up to now, it's a negotiated amount, generally speaking. Water resources used to be a cost allocation equation that was developed back in 2015. We're now at a fixed percentage for this coming year. And Steve and Johanna and others are trying to work with water management next door, and certainly yourselves, to say for this year until we have a full plan, can we have a straight percentage?
Okay, so for the moment they're negotiated, but you're thinking about other alternatives, and of course, other obvious alternatives could be how much water is produced in each of those cost centers. Another alternative could be what are the relative costs of everything direct in those cost centers, and I'm sure our clever staff could probably come up with 3 or 4 other alternative ways of splitting the baby up, so to speak. So
Yep.
we'll look forward to what you recommend.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please.
So, are current events impacting any of the expenditures? I'm thinking maybe the chemicals, possibly utilities.
Right
Yeah.
now, we're not seeing anything, but I think it's trickling down. It's slowly trickling down. Our utilities, our costs for our operating do reflect an inflation cost. So we already, increased it based on those costs, but we haven't seen any yet.
And
So we do try to keep an eye on that sort of stuff, though, because you're absolutely right. We're starting to see changes within the economy that will absolutely affect us. I think staff has done a good job trying to anticipate certain things. So, for instance, I know Jose has increased the electrical costs within the budget based on what we're seeing. Later on, actually, you just approved it, the membranes for pure water, which is great that we've purchased them now. If they were purchased a year from now, who knows? But that's, if you look at the chemicals and electrical costs for pure water, it's about, of that 11.7 million for operating and expenses and maintenance, it's about $6.2 million for electrical and chemical. So any variation can be substantial within this one budget.
okay, and would the contingency take care of those fluctuations in there, or is that for some other designation?
So, I mean,
Yeah, no, we do estimated a 5% contingency of the cost in case of anything like that, or any like for this capital project, if there are any increases or any change orders. So we do have that contingency to cover it.
and if it goes beyond that, there is, per our loan with the state revolving fund at the state, we have to put a certain amount into a rehab and replacement fund. So there is an ability to buffer it a little bit if, say, a capital project comes in higher, we can sort of use that as a balancing method.
Those are the only questions I had.
Good questions. Anybody else? please.
Yes, just one comment for Paul. So Paul, on the, just, you mentioned the membranes. Do we have backup for the, or we can't afford backups at those costs? But getting them, that I do know, like as in Sand City, getting membranes that we had to have some backups. Because you don't know about when you receive something. When you if you need something that you, sometimes they wear out sooner than other times, that you have a replacement.
Yeah, great point, Marianne. So what's amazing is I think I mentioned this at Recycled Water is I look at the Pure Water plant as relatively new, but we're well past 6 years and at that point where we need to replace a membrane. So we did go out for procurement for both the microfiltration as well as the RO. How many did you put in there as extras? I saw it wasn't that many, but just in case. And those, it's hard to have a bunch because they do need to be kept in a temperature controlled area and so on. And like you said, they're pretty darn expensive. So hence the reason just the one procurement to try to replace what we have and have a subset in reserve.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, please?
Just one follow-up. So am I correct in assuming since this action tonight is just to receive the preliminary budget, you'll bring the final to us next month?
Yes.
The
So
workshop.
at the workshop, you'll have the final budget for all three budgets, four actually, when you include renewable energy. But it won't be until the June 29th board meeting where you
Actually
take action
approve.
to approve.
Okay.
So it's more of a deeper dive, if you will.
Yep.
Particularly into the wastewater budget in May.
Thank you.
Right, with that, we'll take out for public comment. For folks on Zoom, you can use raise hand function. All right, I'm not seeing any takers, so we'll bring it back to the board for a motion and
Move to
delivery.
receive.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve and Johanna. All right, with that, we'll move on to 10B, which is to consider accepting the Monterey One Water Regional Treatment Plant Comprehensive Master Plan Report for upgrade of the regional treatment plant. And with that, pass it to Matt for staff presentation.
All right. Good evening, directors. I'm your Director of Engineering, Matt Thompson. For the last year or so, we have put a lot of effort into developing a master plan for a comprehensive upgrade of the regional treatment plant. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the final product. I'm going to take some time to explain why we needed a master plan, the deliberate process we went through to develop the plan, the end result of that process, and then finish with a preview of the estimated costs. As you know, Monterey One Water owns and operates a 29.6 million gallon per day capacity regional treatment plant north of Marina that provides wastewater treatment for nearly 290,000 people in North Monterey County. The RTP, as we call it, its original and primary purpose is to protect public health and the ocean environment. But it is also now the source of water for our two major water recycling programs, the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project and Pure Water Monterey. Next slide, thank you. Here's an aerial overview of the regional treatment plant, showing in orange the area where we focused our planning efforts. The regional treatment plant is now 36 years old, and many treatment components have reached end of useful life. Some components, such as the primary clarifiers, are in poor condition and in danger of failing. The RTP was originally designed when energy efficiency was less important, so it is not very energy efficient. With the rising cost and reduced reliability of commercial electrical power, there is a need to improve electrical efficiency. The RTP was originally designed to treat only municipal wastewater, but is now being used to treat a variety of wastewater types, including agriculture and stormwater runoff. There is a need to improve the performance and resilience of the biological treatment process to effectively treat these various wastewaters. With evolving water quality regulations, there's also a need to remove nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus from the wastewater stream. An upgrade to the regional treatment plant will be a major undertaking that will likely take 10 years or more to complete. Careful planning is required. So in January 2025, we hired a professional engineering firm, Black & Veatch, to assist us with preparation of a master plan. And with us this evening, we have Katie Zusi and Ashu Shiralkar from Black & Veatch who assisted us with preparation of this master plan. The master plan will provide clarity on what the upgraded treatment process will be, so we may begin early steps such as preliminary engineering and the lengthy environmental review and permitting process. The master plan will estimate what the upgrade will cost, so we may begin adjusting revenues and pursue low-interest financing. Development of a master plan is a highly technical and consequential process, so we involved many Monterey One Water technical staff and consultants, ranging from the executive officer to operations and maintenance staff. Black & Veatch led this group through a series of structured workshops. First, we developed the basis of analysis. This is, for example, the flows and loads coming into the regional treatment plant. Then we considered the world of treatment technologies available. As you can imagine, there's a lot of potential solutions out there. We then whittled down that world of treatment technologies available to develop 3 feasible upgrade alternatives that are a good fit for Monterey One Water. We then completed a quadruple bottom line analysis of all 3 alternatives, and I'll give you a glimpse of that in a minute. And then finally, we are recommending the best alternative with strategies to complete the project in phases over time. All right, here's a quick series of slides showing the 3 feasible upgrade alternatives we considered. There's a lot of technical information on these slides that I won't delve into in the interest of time, but I'd be glad to answer any questions later. The first alternative is a biological nutrient removal process. To summarize, this process uses large concrete basins filled with massive amounts of microbiology to break down and remove pollutants from the wastewater stream. With this alternative, there's an opportunity to refurbish our existing primary and secondary clarifiers and incorporate them into the upgraded process. This will save the agency tens of millions of dollars. I sometimes like to think of these as analogous to cars. If this alternative were a car, it would be something very practical, right? Like your Toyota Camry, right? It's nothing fancy, but it gets the job done, right? This particular alternative has the lowest labor cost, the lowest chemical costs, and the lowest electrical power costs. All right, the second alternative that we evaluated is similar to the first, except it would use advanced primary filters and a new cutting-edge aeration technology. We call it intensified biological nutrient removal. The advantage of this alternative is there is an opportunity to reduce the size of the basins. The disadvantage of this new aeration technology is it adds significant cost and some operation complexity. All right, the third alternative we evaluated is a membrane bioreactor process. This process uses membrane filters very similar to what we have at the advanced water purification facility instead of secondary clarifiers. The advantage of this process is it produces outstanding effluent quality. The big disadvantage is it requires very high amounts of electrical power and is expensive to operate and maintain. If this alternative were a car, it would be analogous to your, European sports car. It's fun to drive, but expensive to operate and maintain. All right. We then had everyone who was involved in the planning workshops independently score a wide variety of evaluation criteria. Here is the list of criteria we scored. After we evaluated the non-economic criteria, we then introduced the costs of each alternative. So we did the non-economic evaluation first, make sure we had the right solution, and then we layered in the cost information. We not only looked at the upfront capital cost, but we also looked at the operation and maintenance cost for the life of the new facility, often called net present value. This is important for our customers. We want to make sure our decisions are based on the total cost of ownership, not just the capital cost, for the entire 30 or 40-year life of the facility. We then combine these evaluations to guide our decision. These charts summarize the result of that analysis. The circles on each of these charts represent each of the three alternatives. Those shown furthest to the left have the lowest capital cost and net present value. The first alternative, the biological nutrient removal process, clearly has both the lowest capital cost and net present value. The vertical position of the circles on this chart represent the average of the non-economic criteria. And it was actually pretty remarkable. All three alternatives scored very closely on the non-economic criteria. So for this particular planning effort, the life cycle cost of the alternative ended up being paramount importance. All right, so the major recommendation of the master plan is to replace our existing trickling filters with a biological nutrient removal process. An upgrade to, it's commonly called BNR, the wastewater geeks in industry, if we were to upgrade to this, they would call this a BNR plant. An upgrade to a BNR will add 30 to 40 years of life, new life to the regional treatment plant, and enable us to remain compliant with evolving regulations for discharge to the ocean. Here's an overview of what the project would include. We would first rehabilitate the existing primary clarifiers that's shown in green at the right side of the exhibit. Then we would build the new biological nutrient removal basins in the area north of the trickling filters that's shown there in blue. That area was originally reserved many years ago for replacement of the regional treatment plant. We would also rehabilitate our 6 existing secondary clarifiers and incorporate them into the new BNR process. This will save many millions of dollars. That said, this is a very large project and will require many years to carefully design and build. With exception to the original construction of the regional treatment plant in the 1980s, this will likely be the largest capital improvement project in this agency's history. Our early cost estimate for construction is $234 million in today's dollars. Professional services such as engineering, design, and construction management are required to deliver such a project. Adding in those estimated costs brings the total project cost estimate to $293 million. We have incorporated these costs into our capital improvement program, with the cost escalated over time to account for inflation. We're sensitive to the agency's financial constraints. We have phased in the projected spending over many years so that wastewater rate increases needed to fund and finance the project may be gradually implemented over time. Here's a chart that I presented at the last Recycled Water Committee meeting, showing our projected spending on all categories of capital improvement projects for the next 10 fiscal years. Spending on the regional treatment plant upgrade is shown in orange. The next 3 years will be spent mostly on preliminary engineering and environmental review. There will be a 4-year break in significant spending after fiscal year 2029. These are the years when we will be pursuing low interest financing for construction and anticipate major spending on other large capital improvement projects, such as the solids handling and resource recovery improvements. Major spending on the regional treatment plant upgrade will resume in 2033 when we aim to begin final design and construction. Our rate consultant, Wildan, incorporated these projected costs into their recent wastewater rates study. The pending rate adjustments will enable Monterey One Water to begin early work on the regional treatment plant upgrade. The next step in the project is to solicit proposals from professional engineering firms for preliminary engineering services. All right, thank you for this opportunity to present the master plan for upgrade of the regional treatment plant. I'm very pleased with the results of this planning effort. We now have clarity about the future of the regional treatment plant and a planning level cost estimate to work with. This report is a great starting point for the many years of work ahead. My recommendation this evening is to accept the master plan report, which is attached in entirety to my written staff report. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Again, Katie and Ashu for Black and Veatch are here to answer the really technical questions. That's all for me. Thank you.
Matt, I just wanted to mention one thing and going back a couple slides. So what you have before you is the full master plan and what it's going to take to get this thing done. What engineering has done so as to work with the rate consultant and the constraints of our financing, as you see here, this isn't the end of the project. It goes on for a couple more years, I believe, 2038.
Yes.
So just to put that in context, the treatment plant will be 47 years old at that point in time. As Matt mentioned, there's a lot of it that's at or past its useful life today. So I just want to make you aware of that, that we're looking at another 11 years before this thing is done based on how we're planning it out. So. Please.
So could we go back to the slide that shows the layout of alternative one? And a couple questions. So in terms of justification for this expenditure, you've said we have 34 to 47-year-old old infrastructure based on technologies that existed 34 years ago. So is it also safe to say that this critical and essential service that we provide to almost 300,000 people, are we also being hit by changed legal requirements for how we must do treatment and therefore need to accommodate our treatment technologies to provide that compliance?
Yes. The regulations today and into the near future are quite a bit different than when the regional treatment plant was originally designed and constructed in the 1980s.
Okay.
Probably the biggest one is the move towards, with climate change and the warming of the oceans, the regulators have signaled their desire for wastewater agencies like ours to remove nutrients from our wastewater discharge. The current trickling filter process is not designed to remove any nutrients.
Got it. Secondly, in phase one in blue in this diagram, we currently have solar arrays. How old are those?
Those solar arrays, we're in a 20-year energy purchase agreement with Tesla. We're about 14 or 15 years into that energy purchase agreement. So by the time we're ready to actually construct the BNR basins in that area, we will have reached the end of the energy purchase agreement, and there's an opportunity to remove the solar fields with no consequence to the agency.
So I'm aware that solar panels, as they get whacked by solar radiation over the years, lose their ability to create electricity. Typically, these sorts of lease agreements at the end of 20 years, we own the panels. Do we know what sort of output loss those panels are likely to have at the end of 20 years? And the follow-up question is, would it be useful for us to move them elsewhere on our property and keep them producing some lowered amount of power?
These solar panels have already seen quite a bit of decline in their power productivity. I think it's actually declined more rapidly than we thought, than when we set it up. I would think that in another 5 or 6 years, they would be at a point where the efficiency of them would really not make it a wise use of land. In our case, we've decided to go really big with biogas, right? So biogas is nice in the sense that it requires a relatively small footprint to produce quite a bit of electrical power. And so our future would be to kind of move away from this solar field, self-generate our power with biogas. And then later, after we build this upgraded process, we're going to take down the trickling filters right in the middle of the plant. That's what's shown in red there.
Mm-hmm.
If there's unused space there where it makes sense to bring back a solar field, we would have an opportunity to do it there.
And do we also own the land immediately left to the blue area?
No, that area starts to transition
We
immediately to the left, but a little bit further to the left, that's getting into Regen's composting.
Compost.
We own to the left, about where the alternative one box is. That's where it gets to be Regen's
Yep.
compost.
Still might be some future space also for
Sure.
solar. Okay.
Sure.
And then last question, do we have any ideas what options there might be for grants to help defray some of this almost $300 million cost?
Yes, we do. So I need.
Give us the
I-
exact
yeah,
numbers.
I need, I need to,
Well,
I need to preface this by saying that this is not Pure Water Monterey. Pure Water Monterey was out there innovative. And so the resources agencies wanted to incentivize projects like Monterey, Pure Water Monterey, hence why that project benefited by so much grant funding. This is, in a sense, a good old fashioned wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And so for these types of projects, the state of California, really the best incentives they could offer are typically low interest loans, right? Essentially government subsidized low interest loans. We're talking loans like less than a 3% annual interest rate, right? What the state of California will occasionally do is they'll sweeten the deal by, for those agencies that apply for low interest financing, they'll disperse grant fundings in combination with the low interest loan. That's what they did with Proposition 1. We have heard that they intend to do something similar with Proposition 4. So, and then in our case, we have learned that if we are a little bit proactive and we stay a little bit ahead of the regulations and we go ahead with nutrient removal, we will be in a much better position to compete for that limited available financing.
And then last question, where does biochar, if at all, fit into this?
Yeah, so I want to emphasize, we talk about the regional treatment plant upgrade, but there's a whole nother half of this plant, and that's the solids handling side of the plant. And we have another project in design, solids handling and resource recovery improvements. We're marching towards being at 30% complete design for that. And I hope to be bringing to you in August an extension of that design agreement to go to final design. And that's where we're going to be talking about essentially converting our biosolids into valuable biochar. It's
And
coming next.
will this new technology have any impact on the quantity of biosolids that gets produced by our processes?
Yeah, if you could think about a wastewater treatment plant from the perspective of the law of conservation of mass, right? If you have a higher performance wastewater treatment process, you're removing more solids from the water, so you have cleaner water. And so, yes, we will see a fairly significant increase in biosolids production. We already have capacity constraints with our existing solids handling system. And we're going to exacerbate that with the introduction of food waste, which is why we're actually moving ahead on this chart I showed you, the lines in blue, with moving ahead with design and construction of the solids handling and resource recovery improvements first, so that when we do plug in the liquid treatment process upgrade later, our solids handling system is already ready to take it.
You'll have the capacity.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? Please.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So Matt, you already touched on it, but when you were looking and analyzing the alternatives, did you take into consideration where the industry is going? And does this allow us to be agile enough? I mean, we're looking at a 10-year time span where as we get technological innovations, we're able to implement those into whatever alternative we have.
The short answer is yes. We spent a lot of effort in the early part of setting up the planning effort to project out where the regulations are trending, where things are going to get expensive, right? I mentioned that, 40 years ago when they were planning this, that energy was cheap. And so they didn't really have much emphasis on energy efficiency. So yes, we anticipate continued escalation in energy costs. And so that was a big focus, sort of projecting where chemical costs, labor costs, electrical, chemical, labor, those are the big inputs, and particularly the regulations. I think we did a pretty good job. We talked directly to regulators at a high level to understand where the regulations are trending, and their input really informed this planning effort.
And the technologies as well.
That's right. We traveled. There was a group of us that traveled to a national conference in Chicago to look at this latest equipment that Black and Veatch had introduced to us. So there was a lot of learning. It was pretty, for a wastewater nerd like myself, it was pretty fun. But yes, we got up to speed on the latest and greatest technology.
And there's certain things in here that you have flexibility built in. For instance, adding the hydrocyclones if down the road we want to do that. So there is flexibility in that design over the next 7 years.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, what I would like to avoid is building an awesome DVD system when everything's going towards streaming. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, we did exactly that. I mean, we don't want to spend 10 years building a plant that's obsolete on the first year that we commission it, right? We want something that's gonna, accomplish the job for the next 30 to 40 years.
But that's a great analogy. So yeah, this is streaming. What we have now is like Betamax. I mean, it's old stuff we got going on.
But of course,
I'll take the DVD player.
yeah, and of course, when China takes down the internet, we'll be back to DVDs.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
Move approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Matt, by the way, for that, and to the entire team. The idea that we're continuing to be creative and innovative around this space and having the foresight to take care of our infrastructure now. And I actually do have a little bit of a follow-up question. This is very much tied to our rate study and the increases that we're anticipating to improve as we go into next fiscal year, correct?
Yes, we have that $293 million cost, and that bar chart I showed with the spend over the next 10 years. We incorporated that into the capital improvement program section of Willdan's rate study. So yes, the pending rate adjustments will support this project.
It's a significant driver between that, the solids handling that Matt talked about, and certainly the projects we have going already.
And I wonder if it would be helpful to add those last 2 years to that chart to just kind of show the full spread of that in future presentations.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. With that, thank you again. We'll move on to 11A. 11 is we're going to start our informational items. 11A is fiscal year 25-26 legislative advocacy report, quarter 3. With that, I'll pass it to Rachel.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Our next topic is a new information-only item and is a recap of the previous quarter's legislative advocacy program. Our objective in introducing this quarterly report is really to create greater transparency into our advocacy efforts in an efficient yet thorough manner. So we will still open each fiscal year with a presentation reviewing the legislative advocacy platform and any new strategies or priorities. We'll also continue to provide verbal or presentation style updates as current affairs unfold. But moving forward, we will now provide this report at the end of each quarter to keep you well informed between those full presentations. So in tonight's report, we've recapped deliverables from January through March of 2026, so our fiscal year quarter 3. And I'll just highlight a couple key efforts in the report. So first, the state has urban water use objectives that will drive down indoor residential use, specifically to 42 gallons per capita per day by 2030. This legislation also requires the state to evaluate the impacts of lower indoor residential water use on water systems, like wastewater and recycled water. So our legislative and technical staff work together to complete a series of surveys as part of this state evaluation. And in general, operational adjustments may be needed as indoor water usage standards change. But for right now, the key takeaway is we are aware of the legislation and its potential impact. We are actively engaging and participating on this front. And we are considering impacts as we make planning decisions, such as the one Matt just shared. On the federal side of things, the WIPES Act would mandate do not flush labeling on non-flushable wet wipes. So here in California, if you go to the store and you pick up some non-flushable wipes, you'll see right on the packaging, do not flush, do not flush. But if you were to go into another state, you might not see that. Or if you were to move to California, you may not be familiar with the impact that wipes can have on wastewater systems. And so legislation similar to what we have here in California that has created this very useful education and labeling requirements has been proposed at the federal level called the WIPES Act. And it too would mandate the do not flush label on non-flushable wet wipes. So this would be, again, similar to the California policy. M1W has done several letters of support related to this legislation. And just last month, the U.S. Senate passed the WIPES Act by unanimous consent. And that is a process reserved for bipartisan, non-controversial legislation. And in this political arena is a really big win. Next steps, it goes through the House of Representatives. And then hopefully it gets passed through there, and then it would work towards being enacted into law. I could go on and on related to advocacy. But as I said in the beginning, we're trying to be thorough but efficient with these quarterly reports. So if you're one of those really interested in the greater details, I do hope you'll spend some time reviewing this quarter's legislative work in our new legislative advocacy quarterly report.
And so I know this one is, as we always have it, sort of looking backwards what we've accomplished. So we're not talking about what happened this month, but I just wanted to throw out there that Rachel, Matt, and I had the opportunity to go to Sacramento last week for about 2 days of meetings, meeting with a special advisor to one of the commissioners at the California Energy Commission, 2 of the state Water Resources Control Board members, one of the division, well, close to be division head of Division of Financial Assistance, where Matt wants to get all their money. Also, the executive director of Cal Recycle, as well as our local representatives, Addis's office, someone in Addis's office, and Senator Laird's office. So it was crammed in a short period of time, but it was pretty effective to be able to hit all those in a short period of time. So, and I'm sure you'll hear about that about 3 months from now as well.
You will, along with the advocacy series I will be doing in Washington, D.C. next week.
Look forward to it. Any questions at this time?
Just one question regarding the state advocacy strategy. So is it, you mentioned 42 gallons a day being reduced to 30 gallons a day? Is that what I heard or no?
No, we're actually in by 2030, there's legislation that we, Californians, should be down to 42 gallons per day per capita. So indoor water use is being driven down just from a conservation perspective, and the state is mandating it. And actually, that ties really well into what Matt was saying of the concentration of our wastewater increasing because there's less liquid, but there's still all the other stuff.
Okay.
Could I ask a follow-up question? Do you recall where about we are in this region?
So unfortunately, I don't know. What I do know is overall our usage is somewhere in the low 50s, like 53. But since we don't really take a look at indoor versus outdoor, it's hard to discern a gallon per capita per day in indoor use.
Yeah, yeah.
As the legislation is written.
Just one quick question for Ms. Godoy. Since here in our service area, we have 3 different Department of Defense facilities, the Language and Defense Language Institute, Naval Postgraduate School, and the Ord Military Community, and we provide for all 3 of them an essential service. Do you have contacts with any folks within the Department of Defense, thinking maybe there could be some grant money coming from them? So could you brief us on what contacts you might have there?
Yes. So we haven't had any meetings in the Pentagon, though I would be happy to take those if we could get them. And so while we don't have direct contacts at the Department of Defense, we do have really great local contacts, and we are our grants manager is subscribed to funding opportunities through all outlets out there on the state and federal levels, including related to the Department of Defense. It does take some pretty significant creativity to score high enough, but we are absolutely open to opportunities. Should we find a project we think is competitive? Because you're absolutely right. You know, we do provide an essential service to those key military installations.
And we did have an exploratory meeting at the city of Monterey. God, this probably is 6 months ago now, with previous city manager Fred Muir on the military resilience program that they were alluding that there may be funding available for facilities like ours with their assistance. So we just need to re-engage with them. We had provided, I think, Nat, our federal lobbyists information, and they were providing theirs so they can get together to see what may work.
After the meeting, I'll give you a suggestion or 2.
That'd be great.
Sure. All right. With that, we'll take it out for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, bring it back to the board for any last minute discussion. All right. Thank you, Rachel, for that. And with that, we will move to item 11B, update on communications and outreach plan for the wastewater rate study and Proposition 218 process for fiscal year 27 through 31. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Rachel, for the presentation.
Me again, with more information. So this time on the outreach that will complement the action you took earlier this month to initiate the Proposition 218 process to increase our maximum rates for the next 5 years. So as we've previously shared, the schedule for the rate study and the Proposition 218 process is tight. That being said, there is still time for meaningful outreach, and our work plan is detailed for you in your packet. Our primary opportunity for public education will be 3 public info sessions in early June. These sessions will be held in a hybrid format with Spanish interpretation available in person and recordings posted online after the sessions. So customers and property owners will receive 2 mailed notices about this opportunity to engage with staff in early June, along with social media and website promotions. Again, our strategies are detailed for you in the packet. And to help support all of you and the conversations that you might have with the community in the coming weeks and months, we've prepared a board overview and speaking points, copies of which have been left for you on the dais. And with that, I'm happy to take any question.
Just wondering if we should make any effort, and obviously under the law, we have to allow any property owner in the public we have to give them notice and give them an opportunity to submit a written objection or a written protest, I guess, as they're referred to in the law. But have we given any thought to seeing if we could find any members of the public who, I don't know how to term this, but who might submit an anti-protest? In other words, support for the rate changes. And could we find any key leaders, CPAs or accountants, just folks out in the public who might be willing to put something in writing to us along those lines?
That is a conversation we have had with our consultant. And we're going to let the process, our plan currently is to let the process unfold a little bit, see what the public narrative is out there, see if a natural advocate appears. But something we've talked about in the past, just a reminder, it is a protest hearing. So the primary voices you're going to hear that night are protests. And so it doesn't mean that there aren't those out there who understand why we're doing this and who support why we're doing this. But similar to when we looked at moving to the tax roll, the primary voice is going to be a protest. And so I definitely see the strategy in what you've mentioned. And I do think that as the weeks unfold, we will be considering that as something helpful and useful. It will also, as we have these engagement sessions with the public, those will be recapped for you when we come forward with the public hearing later in June. And so some of that tenor may appear in there as well, and some of that narrative of understanding.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, with that, we will take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the board. No action is needed on this one. So again, thank you, Rachel, for your presentation on both of those items. And with that, we will move on to 11C, which is organizational development strategies for agency talent management. And with that, I'll pass it to Lyra for staff presentation.
Hey, thank you. Good evening again, Board of Directors. I'm Lyra Sampson, the Director of Employee Services, and I'll be giving you a brief presentation on our organizational development strategies for talent management. So I'm just going to cover, and I mean briefly, so we can get out of here a little early, what is organizational development all the way through to the timeline for our process. Next slide. So organizational development is basically the creation of integrated strategies that ensure an organization has the right people at the right time for any current or future roles. And there's several benefits to this, and one of them being having the next generation of leaders ready to go when we have another position opening. Another position open, or we have a retirement or another type of departure. It can lead to high job satisfaction among employees, knowing that there are those opportunities for them at the agency to either move up and or gain some additional skills. It can help cultivate and maintain loyal employees, which goes back to our creation of being an employer of choice. It's one of our strategic goals. And it can give the agency a competitive advantage because as we know, Matt just talked about some of the new technologies that are coming. There's a possibility maybe there's a new certification that our employees are going to need, or some new technology they're going to have to learn, or new skill set. So having that competitive advantage by having a talent management plan is a huge benefit to the agency. Next slide. So there are several components to organizational development. The first one being talent acquisition, and that's looking at your hiring process and coming up with strategies to find that top talent and get them on board. The next one is performance management, which is the evaluation process, and that's where supervisors can communicate to their employees, how they're doing, provide that feedback. And for the purposes of today's presentation, we'll be looking at the next two, succession planning and talent management. And succession planning is, identifying and developing those processes so that we can have those key people ready and available to move into critical executive management positions and or our managers. So we can have, business continuity. And talent management is really just looking at ways to enhance our employee skills. It can be anything from leadership training all the way to just on the job training. Next slide. So these are the 5 steps we've looked at in creating the plan. It definitely will be a little bit more in depth, but it's basically you plan, you implement, and then you evaluate what you've come up with. Next slide. And the first step is determining the scope, and we'll be looking at things like who should we have involved in this process? And I think, for the most part, it's been at the exec level. We've had those conversations with the executives at our exec team meetings, but I think adding in supervisors and managers will be pretty critical to this because they know their people, they know their team, they know what skill sets they're going to need in the future. We'll look at any vulnerabilities that we might have with all the changing laws, new equipment we're bringing on, specifically thinking about Matt's project over the next several years, and just any certifications that the state might mandate for us, specifically with our AWPF. They required us to have those certs, and our people went out and got those certifications.
Who's standing with Tammy on the stage in that top right photo?
That's actually not Tammy. I think that's Allison.
Oh,
And I
okay.
do believe that's our general manager in that, in that suit.
Yes.
Am I right?
That's awesome.
It
That
was
is
an award
awesome.
ceremony at
Of course it is.
Water Reuse Association. So it was just, 800 of our closest friends.
And whose birthday is it? The cake day Jose is holding.
That's what I was wondering.
Several that day. Yes.
Nice.
Nice.
Very nice. I love the photos.
Right. And so then the next step is looking at what positions and skills.
Sorry, I can't keep it together.
Looking at the different positions and skills that will be falling under this plan. And some of the questions we'll be looking at is who should we include in identifying the key positions? And again, I think our managers and supervisors, they're going to be very key to this because they know they know their team, they know what they're going to need in the future. And so including them in that process is going to be very critical. Looking at are there any specialties? And I think about our SCADA position and how long it took to fill our SCADA position. That was a very critical role for the agency, and we had to go out and get consultants to help us out. Now we have SCADA people on board, and they're definitely doing a really good job. And how does the position that we're looking at impact the agency being filled and or if it's not filled? And that's that SCADA position example. And what skills are they going to need in the future to maintain and compete for those roles? So now we've identified what the process is going to be. We've identified what positions and skills. Now we need to find the people. And first question we're going to look at is, do we even have people interested in not just our manager positions, but enhancing their skills? Who are our strongest candidates that we're looking at for these roles? Do they possess the skill set to benefit the agency and themselves in these new roles? I'll go through all the other questions. Do they want to take on more responsibility? And specifically this one, I think about those employees that they don't want to be a supervisor. They don't want to be a manager, but they do want more training. They want more skills. They love their role. They're wrench turners. They don't want to manage people. We don't want to forget about those employees during this process, and that's kind of the talent management program's focus. And so once we've identified who these people are, the supervisors and managers will sit down with them, and employee services will coach them through the process, just ensuring that they don't make any promises, because just because someone participates in the program, it doesn't guarantee that they will be accepted as the new supervisor or the new manager for any of these roles. It's mostly just to gauge their interest. Next slide. So now that we have the people, did you have another question?
No, just, there's another cake in this picture.
We love cake.
A lot of cake going on.
Point that out.
March had, I think so, yeah. So we eat a lot of cake out of there to be. And so the next step is the mentoring and training process. We plan to create a performance development plan, professional development plan, excuse me, for anyone who's interested in this. That will look at the current skills and then just those skills that we identified previously to say, okay, where are they and where do they need to be? And this plan can include anything from mentoring, on-the-job training, leadership development training. And if we don't have that training in-house, we would need to send them outside. And we do have training budget to cover most of those costs. And as far as the leadership plan, we typically work with Catherine Hambley, which I think most of you are familiar with. She can help us create that custom plan just for our agency versus kind of those cookie cutter ones that are just more for pretty much anyone to take off the shelf. And lastly, it's the evaluation period. This is an ongoing process. This isn't something that we're just going to do once and just, end it there. We'll look at how things are working. We'll have those quarterly reviews with the participants and their teams just to make sure that, things are staying on the right track. And then just provide the board an annual update saying, hey, this is where we were, this is where we are, and kind of looking forward to the future. Next slide. And this is a very tentative timeline. I would like to have shortened it a little bit, but we think that identifying the skills and the mentoring is probably going to take a little bit of time. So we want to make sure that we, allow for enough time for those in that first round, because we do have over 100 employees now. So doing individual plans for each of them is going to take a little time. We just want to make sure we do it correctly. And that's everything. So questions?
Any questions? I think the thing that comes to mind for me is like two things. Any particular vulnerable positions, which you kind of spoke to, but like what are those ones that are very meaningful for us where we can kind of see without maybe going into a whole plan, a planning process, like what are the ones that make us the most nervous, like right off the top? And I wonder what kind of experience and how much effort can be put into to doing that here initially. And then it's not just those, but also looking at like the folks that we anticipate maybe retiring soon, and what that looks like. And how can we do an expedited process? 'Cause I think it is good to take our time and make sure that we get it right, kind of organizational wide. But when it comes to positions like the SCADA, like we don't want to end up in that position again. So how do we anticipate that and maybe, and I would argue that maybe some of this effort is already happening and going on, right? We're already providing cross training. We're already providing the skill sets that are needed to help support some of this. But I just wonder what the thoughts are as it relates to that.
So I'm just going to touch on a few of the things because I think you had a number of questions in there, and then let Lyra actually get in some of the details. So I thought this was a great presentation because it's something the board had asked of me of what are we doing about succession planning and talent management? And if we go back a few years, I'm going to guesstimate we were probably down 15%, where you were 18%, where she was just not, her department was buried. So the numbers you saw today, it's way better.
Mm-hmm.
But within the industry, we're starting to see, we're not starting, we are seeing retirements, as you mentioned, certainly, as well as the demands for positions so much that we're seeing people go elsewhere. And whether that be other public entities or private firms. I'm actually working with, it is now about 10 other GMs throughout the state on the advanced water purification certification. There's certainly restrictions within that certification of how you have to get it that we think can be softened to a certain degree, because as more of these facilities come online, there's not enough out there. So what keeps us up at night? A lot of it's operators, and more specifically, the advanced water purification, the advanced water treatment cert people. Certainly SCADA. How much more of our stuff has instrumentation than it did 10 years ago that we rely on to do our jobs? And the other thing is, as people retire, a lot of that experience gap for the Matts of the world, it's tough to get people. So I think it's very timely to do this. And I agree, it's not going to be this holistic, we're going to do all positions at once, but a little more focused. But it's also one of those things that it'll take years to do it properly and build a bench, build that minor league, if you will, as well as have our eyes towards the outside. So it's doing this, the talent management, which you just asked us to report on, but also what you've done in the past in terms of compensation surveys and salaries and so on, just to be able to attract and retain people. I don't know if you want to get more into Tyler's question, because I sort of went off to the side there.
Well, you touched on several of those positions that are critical positions, but one of the other ones that I know we've had some challenges in the past, it's our electricians. This is something across the board, our electrician instrumentation techs. I get phone calls from other HR folks saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing over there? You stole our person." And we're glad to have them. But it's looking at the compensation, it's looking at the skills, it's looking at what we can offer. And I truly think that the last round of MOU negotiations really helped with increasing those salaries so that we can get people to move to the peninsula, because it's not cheap to live here. It's something that every time we use a recruiting firm that comes up, "Hey, can you, maybe increase the moving allowance, or is there a way you can find to increase the salary a little bit?" And right now I'm working with Rachel on one of her positions with a recruiter, and that's one of the things that they brought up was, this is kind of in the low area. Is there a way to add more, funds to it to attract more people? So that's something that unfortunately the cost of living in Monterey County has hindered us getting some people. But we persevere, and we keep pushing, and we keep trying. And now I think last year we had about 8 to 10 positions when I gave the vacancy report, and now I only have 3. So I definitely think the MOU, those changes really helped with these positions.
And I'll just make a final comment, and then I'll pass it to you, Tom. I think you raise a really good point as it relates to the recruitment and retention piece of the effort, and as it relates to the high cost of living. I think that's a conversation that's really important for the board in particular, as we have discussions around labor contracts. And without getting into that too much, I think there's an opportunity here, and I don't know how that works, but how do we make this something that's maybe somewhat data-driven or supportable enough? And as we go into those discussions, it really helps to highlight those touch point areas that help ensure that we're supporting the executive team in a way that helps maintain the work that's required in the agency.
So that is really a timely comment. And I'm sure all of your cities and districts are facing this as well. We're at the end of a 3-year MOU, for next year. So Lyra will start that process of doing what we've done in the past as a salary survey. We're looking at a full compensation survey potentially to get the holistic picture, and then move into that negotiation phase. We're not going to wait till next year. It's going to be later this calendar year, even though we have till June 30th. So that would be very helpful, is just to participate in and look at that compensation survey that Lyra will be putting together.
And I'll say that it's not something that's done for the sake of just doing it. I think it's important because I think one of the things that I think is probably on all of our minds as board members is like, how do we keep the costs low and what the impact that is as far as public image. But it's also balancing the needs to make sure that we're taking care of our workforce and maintaining that workforce, because what is the risk of not making that investment now long term for the agency. So it's like that balance, but I just wanted to recognize that because I know that it is a concern. It's not just spending money for the sake of spending money. It's the reality that exists in regards to how this functions and operates. Please, Tom.
So I don't want to take up board time with this, but Lyra, if you could see me afterwards for your consideration, I have a related suggestion.
Awesome. All right. And with that, we'll take it out for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Chai, could you expand that? Perfect. All right. I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Any last minute comments on this one? All right. With that, we will move on to 12 staff reports.
Just real quick, I'm continuing with my updates to all the member entities. I think after tomorrow, which I will go to the Board of Supervisors to present, still have the City of Salinas and Marina Coast Water District, but I believe I've gone to each of the others. It's been great to get some of that feedback and the perspectives from all the various councils and boards out there. So I think we're scheduled. I think we're scheduled in later this month. I'm not sure if we're scheduled for Marina Coast yet. I know you've had some changes to your board agenda.
Right.
Also, we're getting more involved with the Salinas Valley Basin GSA. As you well know, I'm on the advisory committee, and where I thought it was every 2 months, we seem to be having meetings about every 3 weeks now. It's understandable with the short time frame and short fuse that the SVB GSA has to make a decision as a board, but that is an increased level of involvement. And then I know we have a couple other staff reports. Do you want to go next, or do you want to? Okay. Okay, Jose, anything?
Good evening, Chair Smith and members of the board. I do want to add to Lyra's presentation and give everybody peace of mind. Rumor is Paul's going to be around for 20 more years, so you don't have to worry about that position.
There is that. The college expenses of the kids. Thanks.
That's the start of our organizational development strategy plan.
Just a quick update. It's been a little bit of a hectic month with the strange weather we've been having. You know, some wet weeks earlier, and then a little break, and then another little wet streak. So these numbers may not paint the full picture. We did start the Salinas River Diversion Facility at the first of the month. We started the process of bringing everything online. It's averaging about 5.2 million gallons per day of production through yesterday. SVRP is supplementing that with 10.4 MGD average production, but that should be ramping up. It looks like for the next 10 days, there isn't much wet weather in our forecast. AWPF is averaging 4.7. You know, unfortunately, we were thinking by this point of the year, the peaking would kind of be behind us and the wet weather would be done. So we had some deferred maintenance we took into action, and it is still averaging 4.7 MGD, and we're hoping to finish the month out somewhere between 415 to 420, maybe 425. And that's about it. Just a quick little update. We are still working on some punch list items for the WPF expansion. And tonight we have a rare event where we're doing a full plant shutdown, where we hold flows at the pump stations beginning around midnight. And that's to facilitate one of the projects our engineering team is working on, the brine mixing facility, which is going to require a 5-week bypass of our outfall pipe. So we're going to be putting in well, not we, MPE is going to be installing a plug, and we have a series of pumps set up to pump around that portion of the project as they install that flume. Matt, I don't know if you wanted to
Yeah,
add
just
little
a
bit.
point of correction. It's not to facilitate the brine mixing structure. It's to facilitate the installation of the final effluent flow meter.
Right.
Yes.
And that's it. Any questions that we have to answer? Thank you.
And before going to Rachel, I just want to point out Russell, who you've seen him here all the time. He's one of our IT guys. He did the Big Sur Marathon yesterday, and I thought he was walking pretty well just now. He got a personal record for himself, and I think that's just absolutely amazing.
Nice. Russell, what was your record?
Russell, can I share it? Can I share that? Or come up to the mic, Russell.
Your record before, and what was it? What'd you get yesterday?
4 years ago, I did it in 3 hours and 30 minutes. Yesterday, I beat that by 1 minute.
Nice.
Very efficient.
There was a tailwind.
And you're older, so in the tailwind. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate it.
awesome.
Sorry, we're just going to get set up here really quick.
So Rachel's going to go over a virtual tour that her department and a consultant have been working on to help our website and just outreach to primarily middle schoolers and high schoolers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So it's
And-
show and tell night for me. So I am very excited to share with you something that my team has been working on over the course of the year. A lot of effort by our community liaison, Michelle Bumgardner, and a vision we've had to help support our in-person tours. And so we are going to be releasing a campaign this May called Bring Wastewater Treatment to Your Classroom. And it is a 360-degree virtual tour that will have a note-taking component, classroom lesson plans that meet state classroom objectives. And while designed for grades 6 through 8, and then a component for grades 9 through 12, it's going to be on our website, available 24 hours a day, and can be accessed by anybody. So it's actually going to be one of the tools we use throughout this Prop 218 process to help educate and show the public just what it looks like to come to work for Monterey One Water and to treat and safely reintroduce their wastewater into the environment. Part of the funding for this opportunity came to us from a CalRecycle grant that helped fund the co-digestion project. So thank you, CalRecycle. And because of that, this first phase of our 360-degree virtual tour features wastewater treatment, so not conveyance or collection, so not pump stations, but wastewater treatment and co-digestion. But it has analytics on it, so we're going to be collecting those over time, and we're already looking at rolling out more phases for wastewater conveyance, so our regional system with the pump stations, and then the water recycling projects, and eventually the renewable energy projects. So with that, I'm pleased to share with you our 360-degree virtual tour. As viewers come to our site, there is a video of Paul welcoming them in a shirt with poop emojis on it. Nothing says, come work for Monterey One Water, like a shirt with lots of poop emojis on it. I am not going to force you to watch that right now, but just so you can kind of understand what the difference is between a virtual tour that might just be a video. This is a 360-degree interactive tour. So using a mouse, it's kind of like Google Street View or Google Maps, where you have imagery. Sorry, as I pan, there's a delay, but it basically allows you to move around and explore the treatment plant. It is set up to go in the flow of water. So it has different navigational tools, whether down or using the buttons, but basically kind of walks you through the treatment process where you have info on the side, pop-ups. Did you know you do know, wipes are not flushable. And in California, they're even labeled such.
Wow. That's an advertisement right there.
Yeah.
Twice in one meeting.
So really just a great opportunity for us to be able to continue to educate the public on the services we offer here at Monterey One Water, and for them to get a behind the scenes look at infrastructure that even if you were to come in person, you're not going to get to see a lot of this infrastructure. Safety is our number one priority for our staff and anyone who comes to our facility. And so that means if you're not trained, you don't have the proper protective wear, there's a lot of our facility you don't get to see, but in this 360-degree tour, you do. So really excited. I hope that you will all go online and check it out. Share it with your friends and family. It's nothing like it's an exhilarating way to spend the evening. I will tell you, I've had a 4-year-old very interested, right? When you go through potty training, where does that go? Well, now we have this tool to educate the youth.
You're really nerding out on us right now.
That's not that's the second time though we've nerded out.
No flushable wipes. Thank you for this. I actually think this is awesome. Even for us as board members, it's nice because when you're on a part of a tour, you're kind of moving and you don't want to like stop the flow too much, pun intended. But this is nice because you can take your time and appreciate and understand it in a way. So I look forward to diving deep in here, and I appreciate the team for putting this together.
And we'll be sending it out to teachers throughout the service area and throughout the county. And so once that goes out as well, maybe we'll share it with the board in case you have teacher connections and you would like to introduce the new lesson plan for middle school and high schoolers to your peers.
Please.
So this is great. And I was wondering, it's going to schools. Could this be made available to jurisdictions where they could put it on their website and catch everybody at home? Because I know a lot of adults that use the wipes that plug up our systems. So, I mean, if there was a link, all of us could put something on our websites for
Definitely do a
people
link
living in
to
the
all the member entities.
jurisdictions.
Yeah, absolutely. We can share that. We're putting together a list of all your comms teams actually right now as we build a toolkit for the proposed rate increase. So once we have that list, we can
Good tool
forward
to
it
share.
along.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for that, Rachel. Any other staff reports? All righty. Board member or comments reports.
Tyler, it says that the next meeting's on the 21st, but it doesn't have a time on there.
It is the same time, I believe. 6
It
o'clock.
is 6 o'clock
Okay.
That's good.
on that
question.
Thursday.
Yep.
It's the oddball May meeting, which will be the budget workshop.
Any other board member comments, please?
So recently at Special Districts Association of Monterey County, I was elected yet again as vice president. So just wanted to tell you that at our April meeting last Thursday, some of you may have already heard this, Kate McKenna, the executive director of Monterey County Local Agency Formation Commission, announced that she will be retiring in June. So I guess the county's in a hiring process right at the moment. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.